Up to this point, we've only talked about how to hold still in a sport where you have to move extremely fast. But don't get it twisted. Being able to hold rigidly still in the right places is key to being powerful in weightlifting. Bracing your feet against the floor is how you maximize the power you can generate. And holding your spine still with your back and your abs is how you transfer that power from your lower body to your upper body. But now that we have your positions set, you need a simple and, more importantly, consistent way to use them. Every lift that you do has the goal of changing the vertical position of the barbell, whether that's picking it up, putting it down, or some sort of combination of both. In order to produce power, you have to brace. But in order to direct that power to the right place, you need to aim. A proper aim lets you take advantage of your body's positioning to set your lift's finished position before you start, stay connected and in control during your entire lift, and knowingly lock that barbell into the right place overhead every single time, as long as you're strong enough. So let's start breaking that down. Even when somebody's established a really good brace, it's super common to then try to execute a lift by exclusively thinking about the position of the barbell along its path. Now, an example of this would be like performing a snatch and then thinking about the current position of the barbell along your leg and making a proper response at each necessary position as the barbell passes it. Now, that probably sounds fine, right? And that might sound a lot like how you lift, because odds are that's how you were taught to lift. But remember what I said in episode 1? Weightlifting is a sport, and you don't perform any sport by cueing yourself based on your imagination of what it looks like from the vantage point of the person beside you. Imagine trying to shoot a basketball like that, or throw a dart, or do anything even remotely athletic at all by focusing on the implement itself as opposed to your body and the target you're supposed to hit. Now, I was so incredibly bad at sports when I was growing up, and it was primarily because nobody ever really explained this concept to me. I was so horrible at baseball, and it was because every single time I would go up to bat, I would watch the pitcher, I would watch the ball as he let it go, and then I would transfer all of my focus to the bat, because that's what I was supposed to hit the ball with. But you know what? I almost never hit the ball because I wasn't paying attention to the ball. I wasn't paying attention to the target. I was only thinking about what I was supposed to hit it with. Now, the way that I played Pee Wee baseball is the way that most people lift weights. They focus exclusively on the barbell. They're really only thinking about the implement. But when you're performing a movement, especially a snatch or a clean or a jerk, if your mid-lift feedback point is the position of the barbell instead of the position of your body, that is a real problem. Now, it's not a common way to think about this sport, but another way to look at what we're doing in weightlifting is to say that we're taking a barbell and we're trying to hit a target. Now, that target being locked out at full reach overhead. But just because you're now thinking about using your body to move the barbell doesn't mean you're gonna lock that barbell out in the right spot. But luckily, we can get really specific with your placement, which means we can put a fine pinpoint on your aim. To accurately use your body to aim your lifts, you need to understand a couple points. First, your midline is the strongest position for your body. Your midline is also slightly behind you. And no matter the lift, the barbell needs to be taking the most vertical path it can towards that midline. First, let's establish what your midline is. If we were to cut your body into a front half and a back half, and a left half and a right half, we would have a cross running straight down your center of gravity or your midline. And when you're standing straight up, that line is going straight through your spine, from the base of your neck, down through your spine, through your hips, and then into the floor through the front of your heel. It's extremely simple to understand how much stronger you are along your midline by performing this really simple test that you don't actually have to do, you just have to watch me do it. If I put a barbell a little lower than chest height in the squat rack and extend my arms all the way out and try to lift it up, it's gonna feel really heavy and I'm not gonna be able to lift it very high. Versus if I do the exact same lift, but I bring my hands closer to me, it's much easier and I am much stronger. Now that's obvious and probably pretty intuitive. You're much weaker farther away than you are up close. But to put it into more specific terms, your center of gravity or your midline is the strongest position that you have, and every inch that you separate away from that midline is taking away some of your ability to produce force. Now, as you know, there are very few lifts that you'll ever do that start, stay, and finish along your midline. So your goal during a lift is to always be moving that barbell towards your center of gravity so that as the lift progresses, you're continuously stronger in each position. We're gonna establish that midline awareness with a very simple 3-second exercise that takes no equipment at all. And I want you to do this with me, so no matter what you're doing, stand up. I'll give you a second. Okay, let's do it. From a comfortable standing position, set the 3 braces that we've gone over so far in this series. Brace your back around your spine, hold the floor with your feet, and press your abs out in all directions. You should be able to take small, slow breaths while holding these positions, even when you set them as hard as you possibly can, which is what you should be doing right now. I don't want you to think about a snatch or any lift at all. I just want you to put your hands straight up to the ceiling without sacrificing 1% of any brace. Now, I'd be willing to bet a lot that what you felt was your arms going up into a perfect overhead catch position. And I would also bet that to do it, you didn't have to think about anything other than holding your brace and moving straight up from it. So now let's see if you can lock out that awesome overhead position consistently with this sequence. What I keep coming back to, which is the key point about aiming, is that you have to focus on your body when doing a lift and not the barbell. And now that's extremely easy to do when there's no weight in your hands because you don't have any external resistance trying to pull you out of position. But every ounce that you put in your hands is going to make it harder for you to hold your body in the right position. And it's significantly harder to maintain your focus on your body instead of the weight in your hands. So for that reason, I suggest using a PVC or a broomstick for this sequence. And if you don't have access to something like that, use a string. You should absolutely be able to perform these movements solidly with a barbell, but that might take a little bit of practice. You want to have an extremely solid foundation of ability here, so there's no point in rushing it and messing up your braces. With whatever you're using for this exercise, place it on your back in a comfortable overhead press width. This starts the same as the upper body bracing test from episode 2, so if you need a pause and warm up your shoulders, go for it. Once your back, abs, and feet are set and being held rigidly still, perform a behind the neck overhead press. Once you lock out, don't relax your back at all, but slowly relax your arms to bring that barbell straight back down. Perform a few reps here and make sure you aren't releasing any tension from any brace at any position. Once you feel comfortable here, let's separate the barbell from the midline. Starting with a behind the neck press, lock the bar out overhead. Now, just like a behind the neck press, bring the barbell down, but this time to front rack without relaxing your back at all. Depending on your mobility, this may be wildly uncomfortable and ugly looking, but it's very important to not sacrifice your brace here, even if your position looks less than ideal. You might get cramps in your lats, your shoulders, or your rotator cuff, and your elbows might be facing down and possibly slightly backward, but again, for this, that's fine. Once you're able to drop the barbell down to front rack without losing any tension, focus on your midline and use your lats and the rest of your back body to move that bar directly back to the ceiling. Here we need to pause really quick to clarify something. The movement that you're performing is extremely vertical in intent, but it's coming from the back half of your body. So you're using your back body to press the barbell straight up. In no way when you lift should you consciously be trying to move the barbell backwards. That's a direction you don't really want to go in because you're not going to be able to hold the bar when it's going that way. So you're not pressing the barbell backwards here. You're using your back body to press straight up. It may take a little practice, but you should be able to easily perform a handful of reps, alternating seamlessly between your back rack and your front rack. There should be no visible change, no difference in intent, and absolutely no loss of tension in any of your 3 braces. If your mobility is a limiting factor for you here, you may begin to feel it open up some as long as you're not sacrificing any of your holds. Once you feel comfortable with this pressing sequence, let's move out to a snatch grip and test your bracing and aim with a behind the neck snatch press to tall muscle snatch. This test works the exact same way. Stand with the bar on your back, this time with a snatch grip. If you're not sure where that is, for right now, just go out pretty wide. Brace, then perform a behind the neck press by using your midline to aim. Keep your braces in a perfect hold and relax your arms so the bar drops straight down to your hips. Then, by only holding your braces and focusing on your midline, return that barbell up to a locked out overhead position. There should be no leaning, heaving, or excessive backward travel of the bar. Any of those movements or similar ones show either a breakdown in your bracing or your ability to aim vertically. This movement should be an extremely strict tall muscle snatch where your braces are directing the barbell straight up, finishing directly on top of your midline, never in front of it or behind it. While it may take a couple tries, this is pretty easy to feel. So when you can feel it with no resistance, try introducing an empty barbell. The behind the neck to front rack pressing sequence is actually an extremely good way to open up your lats and warm up your overhead positions before training. But remember, if the added resistance changes your bracing or your positioning at all, you are actively ingraining poor muscle memory. All right, so I know what you're thinking. What about the squat? What about the pull? How do you use your midline to aim and make sure that barbell's tracking in the right direction when you're not using your arms at all? Well, that deserves its own episode. So in episode 5, we're gonna be covering how to aim with a barbell when you're squatting or you're pulling. But now that you've put the time into understanding your midline and you've learned the beginning stages of how to control it, I have no doubt that you're gonna be able to easily transfer this over to your lower body. Just like the bracing sequence, we're working in some monotonous and obsessively specific territory. But if you want to squeeze every kilo out of your lifts that you can, you should gladly put lots of time into mastering these beginner principles, because if you get better at this than you are, you will undoubtedly increase your total.